case. But yeah, so what we want to do is build on what we talked about last time. So last time it was a lot more individual projects and individual, sort of scenarios. Now, we're going to talk about when you're dealing with 10 different teams, how do you deal with that? Because if you've got that many, the likelihood of every single team operating in the same fashion is almost zero. I think we can safely say that it's close enough to zero to consider it guaranteed. We have this idea of multiple different projects all being rolled up into one view. And then we've also got this idea of the opposite is like a single source of truth. This is the top down, what we've decided to build, and then everything kind of streams down from there. We'll definitely also talk about the calculated attributes. There's a lot of information that we can pull from these. We are talking about the server and DC versions, so those on-prem versions of structure today. Some of these things are not available on cloud just yet. The good news is, though, the time and status column here will be coming to cloud later this year. I want to say end of Q3, beginning of Q4, but I'm sure you all know the difficulties in estimating software development. But yeah, we'll talk about transition columns, those calculated columns, and we've got a new feature, formula library, so a new way to add those complex formulas, and just to make it as easy as possible. So I do want to go over some terms so we definitely know what we're talking about. In short, a calculated attribute is any column that's not a field. So this could be a formula column. This could be a progress column. This could be a Gantt attribute that's saying, oh, well, Gantt thinks this thing starts here or ends here or something like this. So there's a lot of different things, but in general, if it is not a field, if it's not status, some custom field, if it's not an actual real value in Jira, it's almost definitely going to be a calculated attribute. Calculated columns are very different. We can think of these as a subset. So calculated columns are calculated attributes, but this is just a pre-made list of formula columns that are really easy to add. Then Expr is, of course, our formula language. We'll talk about this a bit today, but we actually have a complete webinar series that we did just on Expr. So yeah, look up our Expr Bootcamp on YouTube. And then we'll definitely talk about how to make things pretty. So Markdown is the cloud version, Wiki Markup is the on-prem version. So we'll be working with Wiki Markup today, but these are actually rather similar. And then SJQL is not available on cloud, but we will be, showing it on-prem today. There's a lot of really cool complex questions that we can answer with SJQL. It's basically structures extension onto JQL to give it some additional functionality. So yeah, we can just jump into to some examples. So I wanted to start with the single source of truth. This is this idea that we're going to have absolutely everything that we're working on in one structure, and this is really nice for alignment, information radiation, and making sure that we're all talking about the same things. It's very, very nice to say, if it's not in this board, we are not working on it, full stop. Like there's no confusion, there's no if, ands, or buts about it. But it's difficult. I mean, we're going to be organizing a very, very large set of data and making sure that it makes sense, that it's digestible, that we can actually work with it. So there are some cons associated with that. There's going to be some maintenance, there's going to be some updates, things are going to change. We might run into scale limits if we're talking about, 50,000, 100,000 issues, maybe a little bit more. We might be talking about a really, really big board that might be impractical, but we can talk about some ways to get around that. We might lose local context. If we're actually at the team level, two different teams might have a very different idea of what one ideal day or one story point or one epic means. They might have a very, very different idea. And so that local context might be lost. In theory, hopefully it's good that we're all starting from the same point, but, we've all got that single paradigm, but that can also be limiting. If we're all looking at things from the same angle, we might miss things. We might all have the same blind spots. So, we definitely want to decide if it makes sense, if it's reasonable to create this single source of truth. But enough of the theory. Let's actually just jump into the practice. So here, sorry, wrong shoulder. Here I have my single source of truth structure. And this thing is really just these three top level themes. I'm inserting my themes, my highest level items here. And then from there, I'm basically, extending by my implements link. So that means that this relationship here is an implements link to my initiative, and furthermore, it implements link to my epic. So this helps me limit my like high level work. I'm dealing with a relatively small set of data. We can see that I only have 24 items in here. We probably have a lot more if we were dealing with a real use case. But from here, if we actually want to use this as a way of having our team do their work, I'll probably turn off automation and we can open up our quick transformations. So from here, we can start to change the way that the structure works. So I've got my str team extender. And what this is going to do is it's going to pull in stories under epics. It's going to pull in the subtasks, and it's going to filter for the structure team. Now, if I want, I can actually find another item. I've got this unresolved item, and I can move this to the group. I've only got my one group of the str team extender, and now I'm adding this filter to the end. So this is going to show me, my stories, subtasks underneath my epics, and all of my unresolved items for the structure team. And as soon as I filter that, we can see I do start to see some stories. It looks like there's not that many, so maybe I want to remove my unresolved. Yep, and we can see I have quite a few more. So it looks like a lot of these have been marked as done. But now I have this big board that shows me, everything at a very, very high level. We can say if it's not in this board, it's not something that the team is actively working on. It's not something that's committed to. But then if I want to use that same board, I can extend down to my stories, my subtasks. I might add another extender. I could say, let's extend, and I want to show some linked issues. I want to see if anything's being blocked. So I'll say, if the parent issue is blocked by, and I will give it a manual levels range because I don't want to show blockers for my theme and my initiative, probably not even my epic. So I'll say, I'm going to start at level 4 and I'll go to level 6. So just my stories and subtasks are going to start to show their blockers. And now we can see this subtask actually does have a blocker. This one is done, so we're actually not super worried about that. But we can start to change the board a way that makes sense for us. Group these generators so we can turn them all on with a single click. Now even if we had 100,000 items in the board, if it was every single level, we probably have a pretty small board of our 10,000 high level items. And then when I filter it for my specific team, I'm only looking at my slice of the data. I don't have to load every single subtask, every single story, every single blocked issue. I'm only looking at the stuff that's relevant for my team. Now, it's worth noting this blocks extender is a little bit of a messy way to do this. I actually find it kind of inconvenient, but I just wanted to talk about different options. The real way that I would want to do something like that is I would want to add a formula column. Now, I happen to know how this works, and I can write a fancy formula here, which would be something like this, issue links dot filter, type equals blocks, and there's some more little details that I'd want there, but something like this will kind of get us there, and we can see this is going to work. We can see some items. So it's saying BH12 is blocking structure 3 here. It looks like, but there's more context we want to add. There's more information, and that's where this new feature comes in, the formula library. So you can see I've got this load formula option right here, and these are just a bunch of pre-built formulas. Some of them are calculated columns, so like bug fix, percentage, and time are calculated columns that we'll see in the list here. We could just choose them. But we have this unresolved blockers, which is actually very similar to the formula I've written here. And it's gonna delete my old formula. And now we see it's created a much nicer formula. I've got this comment explaining displays all issues that block the current issue and are unresolved. And we can see I've taken the issue links. I'm looking for the type blocks. The destination is the current issue, so something blocking this issue. And the source issue, the issue that's blocking, is not resolved. It has an empty resolution. And then we're just going to return that source issue. And we can see, oh wow, I don't actually have any interesting blockers, it looks like. So maybe I can remove this. Yeah, and now we can see I actually do have some blockers here. And so if we open up this configurable resource here, it should be blocked by pages 2. And that is what I expect. It is blocked by pages 2, and that item is unresolved. So of course, if we go to pages 2 and we mark it as done, now it's got a resolution. And what do you know? It disappears right there because it's no longer linked. So these are going to update in real time based on the information that we have in Jira. But really, this is a great way to get started. You don't need to be a programmer. You don't need to, kind of have that expertise. You can just start with some fully working formulas. I might have jumped in the deep end a little bit here. Probably the best place to start would be, where is it? Time since last update. This is what I think of as our simplest formula. So we're just saying, if it's been updated, give me that time difference, the difference between now and when it was updated. And we can even put that in work time. So we'll say we'll only count 8 hours a day, over that period of time. And it looks like I've got some items that have been here for about 7 weeks. So a lot of interesting things that we can, sort of pull out of the board. And this is just kind of one approach. You can have something totally different at your top level for your single source of truth. The theme initiative epic hierarchy is just kind of one of the more common ways I've seen this done, but I've seen people call them features or change requests, or instead of epic, sometimes people call them sagas. The naming really isn't important. You're given a lot of flexibility as to how you define these things. So that's the single source of truth. That's kind of one way of looking at the data. I often think of that and might describe that as top down. We're starting at the themes, we're working our way down all the way to the subtasks. Now, the complex multi-project roll-up is the opposite. We've got a bunch of different teams. Those different teams are working in different ways. There's not a nice way to unify them. So we're going to basically build a folder structure. And you can see here, I've got my house team folder, I've got my structure team folder, and I've got my extensions team folder. And each one of these has a very, very different hierarchy. They're looking at the data in different ways. They're probably working in fundamentally different ways. And that's all really fine. The things that we want to look for here are understanding those differences. We've got 2 teams or 5 teams or 10 teams. The scale of those differences and the types of differences are going to be slightly different. But these are some big ones to look out for. Estimates, I think, are particularly tricky. I mentioned before, a story point might not be a story point in the same way to different teams. So even if we're using the same field, we might think of that field in a different way. It might mean a different thing to different teams. So let's keep that context in mind. We've got our methods, are we working waterfall? Are we working agile? Are we working safe? Are we working lean? Are we working some kind of combination of these things? Do we have a kind of roll our own methodology? How closely are we following that methodology? Then, of course, we've got our fields, we've got our metrics. I think of metrics as like those calculated columns, those formulas to extract, are we on track? Are we at risk? Things like that. And one team's at risk might be, oh, we've got 2 blocking issues. That seems like a big deal, that we're in the way of a lot of stuff. Maybe for a support team where a bug is commonly blocking a lot of issues, maybe that's not an at-risk thing. Maybe that means something different. Of course, we're talking about different products, different projects. There can be some big differences there. It's really tempting to want to treat all of your projects the same, even though one's hardware and one's software and one's services. They might have very, very different approaches. They might define done differently. For a developer, sometimes submitted to QA means done. It's over the fence. It's somebody else's problem now. In hardware, done is probably a very, very different line. And then, of course, we can track progress different ways. This is kind of another metric, but it's more one of our built-in metrics. We might log work differently. We might have different views of logging work. And then also, what's our QA and review process? Maybe for a smaller company, it's more, it's done, it's shipped, it's in production. For large organizations, there's often more of a QA, a sign off, you know, kind of getting the go ahead to merge through CI or whatever you need to do. So these are just some examples. There's obviously tons of other things that could be different, but you know, you guys should hopefully know your own projects, but things to look out for. So going back to the structure board, I'll open up my other structure, and this is my multi-teams folder structure. So you know, this is exactly the screenshot that I was showing before. So my house team is more concerned with who's doing what. We're a smaller team, you know, just 2 guys trying to understand who's working on what at you know, different stages. Our structure team actually breaks down into other smaller teams, as well as our extension team. So we can see I've got my extension team, and then that breaks down into my testy team, my Gantt team, and some other teams as well. So, you know, these are very, very different ways of looking at the data, and these teams have different fields that are important to them. Risk PM here. This is testy column. So testy is one of the you know, plugins that we mentioned earlier. It's free, so you know, please try it out, take a look. Basically, it lets us create this customized list. And for this is our risk. So instead of actually, you know, a test run, it's not a test run. This is our risk. And we can see we've got a bunch of low and medium. I think there is one high risk item in here somewhere. Yep, so there is a high risk item. And you can see some of them have been mitigated. So I could say, oh, this high risk item has actually been accepted. You know, this is fine. It's all right. Or this medium, you know, risk has been mitigated. So it's been handled. We've done something. But this is just another kind of pseudo field. You know, this only exists inside of structure, and we can basically add this to any structure. But it's a nice way of you know, adding some color and keeping track of something that maybe doesn't deserve a full field, maybe you know, is too subject to change and things like that. But maybe less about the structure itself and a little bit more about how it's built. So I've got automation turned off here, so we actually can't see what's going on. And once I turn this on, we'll see that it's a very, very different view. So what's happening here is my extension team is actually just pulling from my portfolio overview structure. So I'm just grabbing that structure, and then everything underneath here are just the generators from that structure. So if I can just go over to this one, and I'll grab my my portfolio overview, and we'll see my portfolio overview has these exact set of columns. It's the exact same list, the exact same set of columns. But over here, I've added a little change. I've limited it, so I'm only looking at my one theme, my extensions theme. The difference between you know, this generator up top and these ones on the bottom is just all the generators on bottom are part of the structure. So if I drag this underneath, this is now part of portfolio overview. Oh, it doesn't actually let me do that. But I think I should be able to bring this down here. Yeah. So now I've brought it in, and my filter is now part of the portfolio overview structure. And if I open this, you can see I just want to apply this generator to this view. So I'm making a slightly trimmed version of this structure to simplify it to one team. My structure team is actually totally different. I'm not inserting a structure at all. I just have my own insert generator. I'm inserting my structure project, and it looks like epics, I'm guessing. Yeah, so I'm just grabbing all my epics from that one project and then grouping them by team. So this is actually kind of built in place. And then my house team is doing the same thing again. I'm inserting a structure, and then I'm filtering stuff out. But again, I'm not affecting the target structure. This target structure already has its own filter that it's only looking for those active and future sprints. Anything that's a completed sprint should be omitted. But this generator, again, is part of the structure, building a house. And this generator is not. This generator is only part of this. And in general, we can always think of generators as cascading down. And that's why I have this sort by rank here. So the idea is I've just got this sort by rank at the top because now I know everything is sorted by rank. I don't have to worry about it because I've got sort by rank in this structure, but then this one doesn't have it. Maybe the last one does, not actually sure. Yeah, this one does have sort by rank, but now we just have this at the top. We know that every single one is sorted by rank. We don't have to worry if we add a new folder, you know, if it's going to be sorted in the same way. And then if I wanted any sort of like global, you know, removal of issues, this is where I would do it. I would have, you know, a filter, and I would say, you know, we'll do JQL and something like this. You know, if it's not done, I don't want to see it. And now we know that there's no more done items in the board. I'm only dealing with my in progress, my ongoing work. But yeah, ultimately folders give us kind of all the flexibility that we could ask for. You know, we can insert other structures, we can insert other generators. We could actually hypothetically have a manual structure. I could add a folder and then manually bring items in. I wouldn't recommend that because, you know, if you're trying to bring in more than maybe half a dozen issues, it's just a lot of, you know, sort of manual drone-like work. But structure wants to be as flexible as possible to let you define the rules for building the structure, inserting the issues, and then organizing them into a hierarchy. The other thing that I wanted to mention was some of these interesting columns. So I've got right here my first transition to in progress. So this basically means this is the time that somebody marked this issue in progress. And we can see, yeah, there's a blank there because these are some empty items, but we can find an item that doesn't have anything. And it looks like this one is in to do. And as soon as I mark this as in progress, I've started working on this, we get a time. So this was marked at 11:31 a.m. today. And this can become really, really nice because we don't need people to fill out any additional fields. As soon as they get those status transitions, that date information exists in Jira, and then we can start pulling this in, you know, to a formula. So I have formula, and I'm going to load a formula here to start. Where's my load formula? That's so weird. Well, anyways, I guess I just built it from scratch. So we can do something like this, where we say, you know, show me how many days between our first transition to in progress and our latest transition to done. So, you know, this function is going to return the difference between these two dates. And because these are not defined well, it's going to say, hey, I don't know what those are. So we'll just pick this first transition to in progress. Yep, first transition to in progress is going to be exactly what we think. And then latest transition into done. Now, you might think, well, why would we use latest transition into done? Shouldn't that be the exact same thing as the resolve date? Oh yeah, and this is just giving us a number. Interestingly enough, we've got some negatives here. So it looks like we got some things that transitioned into done before they transitioned into in progress, which is strange, but technically possible. But now we can start, but the reason why we'll want to use latest transition into done is because, you know, if we mark an item as done, and actually we can include the resolve date. Yeah, so I've got my resolve date here, and we can see this one was marked closed on the 11th. But if I mark this done right now, it'll use that. Well, it would, but it removed it from the board, of course. So I'll remove my status equals done. But the difference is when we resolve an item first and then move it back to in progress, the resolve date will stay the same. So we can have something that's got a resolve date, but is not actually resolved, because I think this one, yeah, this one has a resolve date of the 11th. It's not actually resolved. So if I mark it to done now, and I add this latest, yeah, transition date done, we'll see that the transition date, oh, it did update the result. All right, well, my mistake. So we can see that the transition date is showing, you know, the most recent time that this moved into resolved. And it looks like it did update the resolution date. But there's a lot of information that already exists in Jira. We don't need people to fill out additional fields or kind of make more work. Structure can just be a really nice way for mining the information that we already have. So it talks a lot about calculated attributes. What I was talking about there was just the status transition time, like when we transitioned from to do to in progress and in progress to done. Should talk about the notes column. I mentioned again calculated attributes, but I didn't actually talk about those. For those of you who know Gantt, we can see we've got a lot of fields here. So what Gantt thinks the finish date is, how long Gantt thinks this item is going to take, if it's fixed duration, if leveling delay moved it. We've got just a ton of information that we can pull out of the Gantt, and then this can be helpful for writing formulas, catching outliers, things like that. And then of course we've also got our notes column. This can just be a nice free form text field, so that way I can write, something went wrong in testing, there's just a lot of flexibility for using these things that maybe aren't true Jira fields. The notes is just going to be available in structure. And then I didn't talk too much about aggregation columns, but I know that we've definitely talked about those before. Hopefully you guys are feeling comfortable with those. The one I did miss here is this time and status. This one is really, really nice. So instead of saying how long between when it went to in progress and when it went to done, we can just kind of manually calculate this. So I can say, how long did this progress stand in progress, and I'll sum over sub items and I'll use work time. So now I can see, oh, wow, it looks like under this epic, total, we spent 451 weeks in progress. And it looks like most of it was this item, which has been in progress for 5 years. That is a long time for something to go. I think Luke's been working on this long enough. We'll call that done. And now my formula says that this is 593 days of working time, while my time and status is saying that this is 356 weeks. So these are looking at slightly different views of the data, doing slightly different ways to calculate it. But obviously resulting in slightly different answers. The calculated columns, this is just kind of the old way of adding these columns. The new way is obviously with the load formula, which actually became available yesterday. So if you don't see the ability to load formula on your formulas, you probably just need to upgrade to 8.1, which just became available this week. I would definitely recommend that you do that. And then with our next update, we'll make it so you can upload your own formulas. So the Jira admin can add their own formulas to that library. And that just becomes really nice. So if you figure out something clever with a formula, you want to make that shareable and easily accessible for other people on the team. I think that'll be really exciting to see. But yeah, sorry, this slide's a little bit strange because I've been showing kind of the structured demo for quite a while here. I think that's really everything I really planned to show. I want to make sure I leave enough time for questions. I see we've got a couple in the chat. Anything interesting there, Alex?
Yes, we did lots of questions. Some of those related to formulas, some to the general workflow. So we will start from the beginning, actually. What is the recommendation for issues hierarchy? For example, project initiatives, epic tasks, subtasks, or not necessary in this specific order. So should be based on the who work with the structures, project management or product management. So how to do that better?
That is a great question, and I don't mean to dodge it. I'm really not trying to avoid answering the question, but there's not a right answer. There is not this is the best hierarchy. It's not that simple. The answer that I usually give customers is whatever you're already doing. This organization and structure, the epic, initiative, whatever, that hierarchy is just a paradigm. It's just a way of thinking about this. So, whenever people ask, like, what's the best way to do this? I like to kind of flip the script and say, what are you already doing? Like, how are you already organizing this? Because Structure doesn't care. Structure doesn't think that there's a right way or a wrong way. So you need to decide what's a good way to organize this. And then whatever you decide on, you'll have a way to implement that in structure. But the most important thing is not what the tool says or what Jira thinks the hierarchy is. The most important thing is how it makes sense for you and your team to organize that information completely outside of the tool. And I would answer that question first. And then once you know how you're thinking about it, then you can try to implement it in Jira and then in structure. But yeah, you can't let structure dictate how you should do work. You dictate how you do work, and structure helps you organize that way.
Awesome. Do we have a possibility to use this structure on a Confluence page?
Oh yeah, we do. We definitely have that availability. So if I go to not we, the wiki, I missed the K key there. We do have the ability to do that. We've got a Confluence gadget, and you can just search for that. Structure Jira. Yeah, we've got, and this will let us embed this in a Confluence page. And then, of course, we can do the opposite. That's what structure pages is for if we want to include a Confluence page in a structure. But yeah, we want to make this stuff extensible and available everywhere. In addition to this, we've also got a dashboard gadget. So yeah, I mean, let that information radiate everywhere.
Cool. Can we calculate the epic cost if the subtasks already have assignees with the cost there? Maybe some option.
Yeah, no, I mean, that should be really easy. Like, let's go to a formula and I'll say something like, epic subtask costs, if type equals epic, then, I'm going to sum up the cost if the type equals subtask. So yeah, if it's a subtask, then I'm going to return the cost. Otherwise, I'm going to return 0. And this is going to result in all zeros. I don't actually have a cost field, so it doesn't know what to look at. But yeah, if I set that to story points now, and I don't have subtasks here, so I'll extend to my subtasks. And I don't think I have any story points on my subtasks, so it's still showing 0. But we'll go one step further. We'll add the story points on the subtask. Oh, no, and they are, yeah, so I have 17 story points. Yeah, and so I'm showing this 17. So I am getting the 17 story points. This one has 13. And, oh, no, and it's not a subtask. So yeah, if I add 3 story points here, I should get 20 up top. Yep. So it is calculating those story points correctly. Sorry if I went a bit fast there, but yeah, basically if the type equals epic, and then inside the sum here, what I'm doing is I've got this if. So I'm saying if and only if that type is a subtask, return the cost, otherwise return 0. So so I'm only counting the cost of the subtask. Of course, cost is using story points here, but yeah, not a complicated formula at all.
Cool. Can we use structure to find epics with no child stories? So epics without children.
Yeah. So yeah, let's if I remove this, we can do this with just epics. So I've got just epics here, and I can still answer this question, which is one of my favorite things about formulas. They can ask questions of things that are not in the structure. So I can just do epic stories dot size, and this is going to give me the number of stories that I have, and we'll see. Okay. Yeah, I thought I saw 76 there, and I was like, 76 is a lot of stories. 2 makes a lot more sense. So yeah, we can see I've got some zeros for the folders because they don't have epic stories. But yeah, I can see them. And then this one has 0. So we can see scope creep has 0 story point count. And then what I could do here is I could filter, and I have the attribute filter. So I could filter based on this. And yeah, I've got my story count formula. and I could say is less than, yeah, is less than 1. So yeah, if it's less than 1, then I want to remove it up. And I put that in the wrong place, so it didn't like that. If you ever get that error, you just want to click at your generators, because I tried to add a generator at the wrong spot there. But yeah, so filter, again, attributes are anything that are calculated, anything not a field. So I'm going to do story points. Yeah, is less than 1. It should actually work this time. And now we can see scope creep is the only one that shows up because it's the only one with 0 stories. So I think the question was the opposite, but you can flip the logic. That's, I think, 99%.
Awesome. Can we calculate the time from which last comment is made on an issue?
Yes, we can. I gotta admit, I'm a little bit embarrassed, but I think this is going to be a little bit harder to write on the fly. So maybe I'll just look at the documentation here. What we'd want to do is go to the item property reference. This is what information we have available. And then if we go to the comment, we can see I do have an update at that time. So I can see, I do comments. I would get my list of comments, and then I would find ones that were after a certain date. So it would be something like this. Let me just delete all my stuff here. Comments dot filter, and $sign is my iterator. So that means the individual comment. And I would say the individual comment dot updated is after, some date. And I would give it some date here. Let's say the 1st of this year. And then I think I can do size to return how many comments. And this is no longer a duration, it's now a general. And we can see, yeah, this one has 1 comment, this one has 0. Yeah, so it looks like this is actually working. This one has null, so this one has no comments. So this one probably has 1 comment, but it's before the time period. This one has null comments. So just the difference between 1, 0, and null.
All right. There are several questions about structured tasty, about risks you showed at the beginning. So can you talk a little bit more about that plugin?
Yeah, I mean, really what Testy is doing is it's just a checklist of information. So I think it'll actually be more helpful to look at the document, or not the documentation, but the system page here. So if I go over here into my little admin section, I know my password. So you can see structured Testy has got this manage statuses section. And this just lets me create whatever I want. So you can add new statuses, you can change their order, and you can give them like nice color backgrounds. There's also the option to suggest notes. So if like they're failed or blocked, they're always suggesting notes. But I could say if it's catastrophic, I also want to make sure that you're putting in some notes here. But yeah, just a lot of flexibility with the number of items. It was originally intended for test running, but we've got risk management use cases. I mean, anything that you could use a checklist for, you can use Testy for. And yeah, it's very simple and straightforward. So it's free.
That's the most important thing. Can we use a value from a column within a structure in a new formula?
Yes, we can. So, if I want, I can have a formula that references another formula. So formula 2, I can say, formula 1 plus 1, and I will just point this, I spelled it Dormula, don't mind my terrible spelling. I can use my epic story size, and now I've got a new formula that's adding that, that's like adding 1. So it looks like if I find some where epic story size had a result. Yeah, it looks like epic story size must have been 2 here because there's 2 stories underneath. And now I'm making it 3 on this one. So I'm adding 1 to that value. But there's a lot of really cool stuff that we can do with that. And with my, and that's basically what I was doing with my days between formula. So we can think of, this one, days between, first transition and latest transition. These fields are technically attributes. They're not formulas per se, but they're calculated attributes just the same. So, you know, this is, we can think of this as accessing an attribute, just like if it was accessing a formula, it would be accessing an attribute. But yeah, there's a lot of cool things that we can do where formulas reference other formulas. The most important thing to realize, though, is right here, like my formula 2 is referencing, yeah, I know I called it Dormula, but this is my epic stories.size. If I change that formula, and I think it's gone, actually. I think it might not even exist anymore. But if I change that formula, I'm not going to change the resulting formula. So if I have formula 1 and formula 2, and formula 2 references formula 1, if I change formula 1, it doesn't affect formula 2. Formula 2 uses a saved reference to formula 1. And this is by design, because that way, if somebody accidentally breaks formula 1, deletes it, something like that, formula 2 still works. So, you know, if you've got multiple formula columns referencing each other, you might need to update your references to the most recent version of the formula. But good luck. There's a lot of complexity when you have formulas with formulas.
Awesome. Another great question about general structure users. It seems necessary to have extenders as a part of automation rules. What is your recommendation for minimum extenders to have in automation versus what you might have in transformations?
Yeah, that is a great question. So when we're talking about performance and when we're talking about really, really big structures, we probably want to be specific with our extenders. So the default is extend all levels up to 10, and this is a lot of work. You know, this means that all 10 levels of the hierarchy, we have to check that this extender is true. If we want to be efficient, we should do something like this, where we give it a short range. So now I'm only doing this on levels 2 and 3 instead of on levels 1 through 10. So I basically reduced the amount of work that this extender needed to do by 80%. So it's not necessarily the number of extenders. You could have a lot of extenders, but as long as they're all only acting on like 1 or 2 levels, you should be fine. When we have a lot of extenders that all have the default and are all acting on all 10 levels of the hierarchy, or however many we have, that's when we get ourselves into a lot of trouble. So all you have to do with extenders is, you know, set this manual levels range, be specific about where you want them to act. And again, this is only important for big structures. If you've got less than 1,000 issues, you don't care. You can have as many extenders as you want, and it's not going to affect performance. But if we are dealing with 10 plus teams, 1,000 plus issues, you know, you're going to want to be very, very careful here.
All right, cool. You have an example with demonstrating formulas and comments. Is there a way to do the same or almost the same with subtasks? So, for example, when the most recent subtask was created or updated?
Oh yeah, I mean, again, that's super easy. So I won't do the whole thing, but we can do the most recent subtask creation is a really simple formula. So all we do is max, give me the max value, and if the type equals subtask, then return created. And this is going to give me the max created of the subtask. And I don't have tasks for these items, so let's take a look over here. I should go to a board with or I should extend the subtasks. So now I've added subtask, and again, this giant horrible number here because I forgot to change my outputs. Output is general. It's just going to show it as a number. I want to show this as a date time, and now this becomes yeah, no, it's a creation. Yeah. So it looks like a lot of these are created on the same date. But yeah, some of these were created very, very long time ago. And again, this, it's the max that's bubbling up. So this is only one. So of course, this is going to be the max. These two are both created on the same day. So again, that's going to be the max. And these ones don't have subtasks. But But yeah, again, there's a lot of nice ways that we can just mix these aggregation formulas. So the aggregation is that max part, and then mix that with a condition. So I want the max if the type is a subtask, and I'm looking for the max of that created field.
Awesome. You mentioned showing blockers before. Is there a way to work with other types of linked items, like has to be done before?
Yeah. So all it is issue links gives us a list of links. So this will give us a list of all links of any type. When we filter, then we're limiting them to a different type. So if I wanted to say, give me type equals implements. Implements is a link type that I'm using all over the place. That's a valid change. So again, list of links, the type equals implements, and then yeah, I guess I'm returning the source issue there. And yeah, now we can see a list of issues that are linked. And if I collapse this, you can see I've got 3 different initiatives underneath core products, and I see 3 different initiatives show up in my formula. I really want this on the other side so I can extend it. You can only extend items to the right, which is a little bit weird, but yeah, we can see these are the 3 initiatives that are right here, and those are connected by an implements link. So that's exactly what we'd expect. And then right here, I've got 4 items linked by the implements link, 9 through 12, and we can see they're here. They're not in numerical order though. But yeah, we can ask a lot of different questions of those links. And again, best tip I can give you for the formulas is this little question mark opens up the documentation. And then as soon as we get there, the item property reference is going to show us what information we can access. So again, the issue link, it's just got 2 issues, the source issue, the destination issue, and the type. But, it's worth mentioning the implements is a custom link type that I created. So custom link types are going to work really nicely with this. Structure in general plays very nicely with custom issues, custom links, and custom fields. Everyone customizes their Jira, and that shouldn't stand in your way at all.
Awesome. There is a small follow-up question about how to show which exactly link type is used, but it's just small change in the formula, I suppose.
Okay.
All right. So is there a way to roll up child dates, find minimum or maximum, and insert it into the Jira for portfolio?
Yeah, of course. So that's actually what we're doing with this little lightning bolt here. So this is the effector. And what the effector can do is, we can basically use this to schedule dates. So we can do something like this, I'll have a formula and I'll call it, date rollup that I can spell. And basically what I can do here is say, give me, if this item is not resolved, then give me the due date. And then I want to find that max due date. So this is the max due date of things that are not resolved. And this will just kind of bubble up here. And again, I forgot my formatting, so I want to put this into a datetime format. And now I can see, this is a date in the past. But of course, I could modify the due date, on some of these fields to change this. So it looks like 8/18 is the highest due date. And then as soon as I put a date in the future, we'll say like Thanksgiving. Now this is going to change because it's got like a new highest date underneath. That's not done, which is the other thing. So as soon as I mark this as not done, yep, now it says the 24th, the 4th Thursday of November is going to be our latest due date here. And then what we would do is we would use this in an effector, attribute to issue field. Again, the attribute is the formula. So I'm going to use that date rollup formula. I click on the little gear, I can see the formula, make sure it's doing the things that I want it to do, maybe even make an edit or 2 here. And then I'll say, I'm going to put this into my due date field. And again, I can limit this. So I can say, I'm not going to do this for my themes. I'm only going to do this for my initiatives and my epics. So, I've got to have somebody manually set those top level theme dates. But everything up to the initiative can be set automatically by this. And then, you keep clicking run and it never actually runs. As you can see, it's going to preview. So this run is actually a preview button, assuming that this little checkbox is checked here. And we can see what the result is. So it looks like one of these is not editable, so we can't change the initiative date. And then some of these are clearing, so they're resulting in an empty date. And we can see one of them is setting to that 24th of November date that we talked about. So I can say just this one, this is the only one that I want to apply, or I can apply all. And then one of the nicest things is we can revert these. So it's a really safe way to update data. We have an audit log, and we can go to manage effectors and look at what changed. So I can click on this ID and we can see, you know, this is the one field that changed. Maybe I want to revert that, but we can see, you know, who ran it at which time and things like that. But
all right, probably I have to stop the right here. So we are on the beacon hour. Thank you. As I mentioned, we'll answer all the questions that have been submitted here and we'll send it in a follow-up email. Thank you all for attending this session, and we'll be glad to see you next week for our expert hour. If you have a minute, we would appreciate if you answer the exit poll. That will help us become better. Thank you all again, and have a nice day.